Feel like they know they messed up. This is the vibe that I get.
창피한 걸 넘어 역겹다. 미국 조지아주에서 벌어진 대규모 이민 단속을 본 한 미국인의 반응입니다. 미국 여성의 한마디가 지금 미국 사회를 뒤흔들고 있습니다.
Charlie Kirk had this to say while he was visiting South Korea last week.
Okay, everybody, I'm here in Seoul, South Korea. As you can see, everyone, they have these like inflatable cushy chairs. Everyone is reading. This would last about 35 seconds in most American cities.
Charlie Kirk saying we should be more like South Korea. I find it absolutely hilarious how just a couple of days later, this lady, Tory Burnham, I don't know, I can't say her last name any better than she can say Hyundai, proceeds to call ICE and has close to 500 people working on the construction of a brand new Hyundai plant in Georgia, one of only 2 in the country, causing them to be detained. And we know that at least 300 are South Koreans that are currently on their way back to South Korea. So this lady single-handedly, at best, has delayed the opening of this plant. At worst, if it was me and I was the South Korean president, I would say, you know what? I'm not gonna open that plant there. And oh, by the way, I'm gonna close the only other plant that's in America. Because understand this, the majority of Hyundai's profits don't come from Americans. And then the president saying, maybe we'll just get some people to teach us how to make those batteries. Fuck no, don't teach them. That's proprietary information. Absolutely not. One woman with one phone call has potentially cost Georgians 8,000 jobs, not to mention all of the other potential economic stimulus that comes from these jobs. Good job, lady. Good job.
조지아주 현대차 LG에너지솔루션 합작 배터리 공장에서 벌어진 초대형 이민 단속의 후폭풍이 미국 전역을 뒤흔들고 있습니다. 당황한 것은 오히려 미국입니다. 한국이 곧바로 전세기를 띄워 한국인 300여 명을 철수시키자 당황한 미국 당국은 갑자기 태도를 바꿔 원한다면 남아도 좋다는 어정쩡한 메시지를 내놨습니다. 불법이라며 쇠사슬을 채우더니 며칠 만에 머물러도 된다고 손짓하는 모순된 모습. 한국인 숙련 기술자 300명이 억류 끝에 결국 한국으로 돌아가기로 확정되자 조지아 공장은 순식간에 모두 멈췄습니다. 단 하루 만에 기계는 멈추고 사람들의 발길이 끊기면서 한때 활기를 띠던 공장 주변은 그대로 유령 도시로 변해버렸죠. 그동안 미국이 얼마나 한국 인력에 의존하고 있었는지가 단 하루 만에 적나라하게 드러난 셈입니다. 결국 한국이 강하게 움직이자 우왕좌왕하는 건 미국 쪽이라는 사실이 적나라하게 드러난 순간이었습니다. 이번 사건은 미국이 과연 한국의 파트너 자격이 있는가라는 근본적 질문을 던지고 있는데요. 아이러니하게도 정작 미국 내 여론조차 들끓고 있습니다. 한국에도 비자 없이 일하는 미국인들이 얼마나 많은데 만약 한국이 똑같이 쇠사슬을 채운다면 미국은 감당할 수 있겠냐는 날선 반격이 터져나온 겁니다. 그 여파는 곧장 현실로 이어졌습니다. 해외 기업들은 다음은 우리 차례일 수 있다는 공포에 휩싸여 예정돼 있던 미국 출장들을 줄줄이 취소하고 있습니다. 한순간의 단속이 투자와 신뢰를 뒤흔드는 거대한 폭풍으로 번지고 있는 것입니다. 독일 DW는 이런 정책을 계속한다면 누구도 미국에 투자하지 않을 것이라고 경고했습니다.
I mean, you mentioned the spectre of investment here. Hyundai and LG Energy have invested heavily in US production under Trump. Could this jeopardize the future of Korean investment in the United States?
Yeah, Hyundai, the company that was rated, is also crucial when it comes to cooperating with US to reinstate their shipbuilding capacity, because South Korea is really leading in that, and specifically Hyundai. I think what we will see is that in the background there will be more discussions and debates whether South Korea should maybe move closer to China if the US really turns out to be very unreliable and relationships are souring. So I think this debate will happen, but I don't think that companies will start to cancel their investments, because after all, plans for investments, I mean, those can be also delayed or can be somehow dealt with in the numbers. I don't think that actually the numbers will be slashed, but I think the mood is very negative right now.
한국인 기술자 300명이 전세기에 오르자 이제야 미국은 사태의 심각성을 깨닫기 시작했습니다. 공장은 멈춰섰고 지역 경제는 순식간에 얼어붙었으며 뒤늦게 잘못을 자각한 겁니다. 그동안 미국이 얼마나 한국 인력에 의존하고 있었는지가 단 하루 만에 적나라하게 드러났지만 정작 조지아주를 제외한 곳의 미국인 대중은 이 사태의 본질조차 잘 알지 못했습니다. 왜 한국이 분노했는지, 왜 전세기를 띄워 자국민을 데려갔는지조차 흐릿하게만 하는 상황이죠. CNN 객원 기자 아담 모클러는 이 사태를 두고 참다 못해 날선 목소리를 쏟아냈습니다. 그는 이번 사건이 이민국의 단순한 단속이 아니라 미국이 한국의 기술력과 투자에 얼마나 의존하는지를 드러낸 역사적 장면이라며 조목조목 풀어 설명했습니다. 무지에 빠진 미국인들에게 누가 진짜 갑인지 강력하게 경고합니다.
The Trump administration is facing extreme backlash from multiple of our allied countries after they essentially stabbed South Koreans in the back. Donald Trump has cut deals with South Korean leaders over the past few months that were supposed to spur investment into the United States. After South Korea conceded and said, listen, we'll help you, we'll make up numbers for you if you want, Donald Trump pays them back by targeting South Korean workers, hundreds of them, at a Hyundai LG battery megasite in Georgia, rounding them up, putting them in chains and in militarized vehicles, hauling them off and using them as leverage to negotiate even further with South Korea. Trump is facing not only extreme backlash from South Korean leaders, but reporters in South Korea are going scorched earth on the United States. There is almost a coordinated, unified push from reporters and citizens in our allied country of South Korea to just shit on the Trump admin, to take down the Trump admin for this massive betrayal. And the relationship between the United States and South Korea is supposed to be a powerful story. It's a story from hardship to prosperity. Now, the South Korean people fought a lot for freedom, and the United States played a central role in stabilizing and helping support that mission. And now, we are just betraying them. Officers, masked and carrying rifles, fanned across the site. They ordered construction workers to line up, demanded dates of birth and SSN numbers, and began sorting who would be cleared to leave and who would be loaded onto buses. People were shackled up, but these were not just random day laborers pulled off the street. Not that that would be okay, but the people in this scenario were highly skilled technicians sent from South Korea intentionally because American contractors didn't have the right skills to build these billion-dollar factories on a tight deadline. So it would never be okay to treat anybody like this, but I just find it even more despicable that Donald Trump tries to get investment from South Korea. South Korea agrees. They also send workers over so they can help build these billion-dollar factories, and the Trump admin deports them. This says workers describe the scene as a war zone.
Building batteries, if you don't have people in this country right now that know about batteries, maybe we should help them along and let some people come in and train our people to do, complex things, whether it's battery manufacturing or computer manufacturing or building ships. So we're going to look at that whole situation.
We're going to look at that whole situation. I feel like they know they messed up. This is the vibe that I get. Some people in the Trump administration like H-1B visas and high-skilled workers, and some people didn't. So I think there are these two competing factions where one decided, hey, we are going to get investment from South Korea. The other decided, hey, we are going to raid this plant and deport a bunch of South Koreans. It never really connected in their brain that this is going to make America look like an absolute idiot on the global stage. It's absolutely insane. And a few things that I want to point out. The contradiction could not be more glaring, which makes America look like an idiot on the global stage. You can't have two impulses coexisting when one impulse is to get every South Korean out and the other impulse is to get South Korean investment in. You can't do these two things, and that's why the fallout is so immediate.
정말 숨막히는 일주일이었습니다. 12일 오후 대한항공 전세기 KE9036편이 인천공항 활주로에 착륙하던 순간 가족들과의 뜨거운 상봉은 단순한 귀환이 아니었습니다. 안도의 눈물이자 동시에 깊은 상처와 분노가 뒤섞인 울림이었습니다. 지난 4일 조지아주 현대차 LG에너지솔루션 배터리 합작 공장에서 벌어진 미 이민 당국의 기습 단속 이후 한국의 답은 단호했습니다. 수갑을 차지 않는 전원 자발적 귀국이었습니다. CNN은 그 긴박한 장면을 전했습니다.
CNN's Mike Valerio is live for us at South Korea's Incheon International Airport, where, Mike, so many families of those returning home surely must be relieved.
That's right, Brian. I think that could be the understatement of the evening here in Asia. And the sentiment that so many of these families have is if you are asked to invest, arrest and the threat of arrest should not be part of that equation of helping out an ally like the United States is being helped by South Korea with its technology sector. So we want to show you the video. We'll have the control room play it with the additional note that a lot of these images, Brian, because of South Korean privacy laws and out of request of the company here, LG Energy Solution, none of the people you're about to see, all 316 of them, none of them have been charged with a crime. So with privacy protections and just the outpouring of emotion, the raw emotion. That's why this video is being blurred. So you see men that are ranging, mostly men, ranging from 20 into their 50s. We're talking about engineers, technicians, not with luggage coming into Incheon International Airport, one of the gateways to Seoul, South Korea, but with clear plastic bags or mesh bags with all their belongings provided to them by the US government. Such a striking sight. So now the question turns to, what are all these companies going to do, Brian, that are here in South Korea, that have future projects in the United States? They do not want anything like this happening to their employees. The president of South Korea, Lee Jae-myung, spoke to some potential feelings of hesitation that businesses might have. So let's go to the video of another moment, an outcry of emotion. It was a giant banner, almost twice as high, tall as I am, about 6'1". It says, "We're friends, aren't we?" And it's somebody who is supposedly depicted as being from ICE, all in black, chains over one shoulder, an assault-style weapon, and a smiling Donald Trump face. That is one of the myriad strands of emotion of how people are feeling being treated by an ally, the United States, like this.
미국은 시간이 지나자 잘못을 깨달은 듯 원하는 사람은 남아서 기술을 가르쳐달라는 뻔뻔한 요구까지 했습니다. 그러면서도 수갑을차는 추방 형식을 내세웠습니다. 한국의 요구대로 수갑을 차지 않고 세울라 공항으로 이동하는 이들의 모습부터, 그리고 마침내 비행기에 올라 고국 땅을 다시 밟는 순간까지 전 세계는 이 광경을 지켜봤습니다.
We notice a couple of differences from when other migrants from other countries are deported. For once, some of the workers waved at us from their windows as they approached the airport, which means they weren't shackled like other workers or other people who get sent out of the country. Also, the plane was hidden from the camera, so we don't know how they boarded the plane, but we know that U.S. immigration usually boards the people that they send out of the country in shackles. So we think that this was part of the negotiations in which the North Korean government wanted this not to be a deportation, but a voluntarily return. So maybe that is what was negotiated with the United States. This would allow them to come back in the future to work if needed. In fact, there are reports that President Trump wanted some of these workers to stay in trained workers, but that didn't happen. The South Korean government wanted everybody to go back as a group. Now, there are still dozens of workers who were detained, that remain detained. I've been talking to some of them from Colombia who said that they haven't been told when they could be released, if they will be released.
And Gustavo, the president of South Korea is urging the U.S. to clear up the visa process when it's related to investment. Tell us a little bit about that, because it does seem that there has been a lot of South Korean investment, but there is at least a sense from the South Koreans that the visa process is not caught up with the demands of that.
현재 한국 기업은 미국 현지에 무려 22곳의 공장을 운영 중이며 투자액만 총 150조 원입니다. 반도체, 배터리, 조선업까지 미국 경제에 막대한 기여를 하고 있죠. 트럼프 집권 이후 미국 내 제조업 일자리가 사라진 상황에서 한국 기업이 유일하게 일자리와 산업을 지탱하고 있었음에도 이번 체포 사태가 발생한 것입니다. 조지아 배터리 공장은 완전히 멈춰섰고 미국 내부에서조차 이게 말이 되냐는 목소리가 커지는 상황입니다.
A ton of people from South Korea were sent here by Hyundai to train the American workers on how it should be done. It was like a temporary thing. And there was something like 8,500 more jobs that were being created by that plant that now are in jeopardy, quite frankly. Not only is that plant in jeopardy, but a ton of companies from South Korea are seeing this and going like, what is this? We were literally in compliance with the stuff that came with the tariffs. That's why we were doing things the way we were doing them. And you're going to rate us? And you're going to make our people feel unsafe? They're actually offering to send people back. They're like bringing people back to South Korea going like, we understand if you don't want to be there and don't feel safe, come on home. And a bunch of them are taking them up on it. All because this lady decided to yell Merca and saw it as a chance to make herself go viral and get some extra exposure. You got some exposure, all right. You got a bunch of people in your district who are now wondering like, how does it help us that you're costing jobs? How is that going to make America great again? You guys are really, really good at fucking things up for yourselves.
한국어 기사를 직접 찾아보며 한국을 걱정하는 사람들도 있습니다.
I wanted to see how this was being reported in South Korean press, and you can see this line right here. 전쟁처럼 like a war. Stormed in like a war. And so basically what's being said in the South Korean media is that it's being likened to a war zone, cites reports on the suddenness and scale of the operation, and highlights the backlash and frustration that legal or short-term business travelers are being treated as undocumented. So noting that many of these workers had B1 visas or ESTA permit. I think this story is going to build. I think this is a situation where these actions are going to have significant impacts on our relationship with South Korea, on South Korean investment in the United States, on business travel and collaboration between the US and other countries. What do you think?
한국인들은 분노했습니다. 온라인 커뮤니티와 SNS는 미국 브랜드를 거부하겠다는 글로 들끓고 있습니다. 보배드림에 올라온 테슬라 계약 취소글부터 시작해 SNS에는 코스트코 불매로 나만의 반미운동 시작, 아마존 버리고 쿠팡 쓰고 넷플릭스와 애플뮤직 구독을 당장 끊겠다. 설레는 마음으로 기다리던 모델 Y, 조지아 구금 사태를 보고 바로 취소했다. 미국의 행태에 너무 화가 나 뭔가 행동하고 싶었다. 4년 기다린 사이버 추락, 주문 취소하고 국산차 직위구공으로 간다. 테슬라뿐 아니라 링컨, 포드 같은 미국산 차도 다 불매하자. 테러리스트 체포와 같은 대우였다. 이걸 외면하는 건 역사를 잊는 것이다 라며 폭발하고 있는데요. 이 불매운동은 한국만의 이야기가 아닙니다. 트럼프의 무분별한 관세 폭탄에 캐나다에서는 미국산 주류 판매 금지와 국산 장려 운동이 일어났고, 인도에서는 맥도날드, 코카콜라, 애플 불매가 번지고 있습니다. 한국의 힘과 결심 앞에서 그 누구도 함부로 움직일 수 없다는 것을 전 세계가 알아야 할 것입니다.
That I found absolutely astounding in its stupidity was the ICE raid on the Hyundai plant in Georgia. I have seen for days any number of mad types arguing that these people were here illegally. They got what they deserved and they were taking jobs from Americans and all of this kind of stuff. And yeah, that's all bullshit. All bullshit. You know why we know that? Because the flight that had been booked for them by the South Korean government to take all of those employees home to South Korea was delayed by 5 hours so that Donald Trump could beg them to stay, because this horseshit is going to cost America billions of dollars. There are like 22 different projects across America that South Korean corporations are invested in. They're just not going to put up with this bullshit anymore. Here's the fact. They have technology no one else has. America wants that technology. They got to bring it to you. That's how it works. And apparently America is too stupid to grasp that issue.
이번 사태에 분노한 건 한국인들만이 아니었습니다. 오히려 미국 내부 언론들이 더 격렬하게 들끓고 있습니다. 구금됐던 국민들은 돌아왔지만 이번 미국 이민당국의 체포 작전은 근본부터 잘못된 것이었습니다. 정당한 취업 비자를 가진 사람은 물론 심지어 미국 영주권자까지 무차별적으로 체포당했습니다. LG 계열사에서 일하다 쇠사슬에 묶여 끌려간 사람 중에는 7살에 미국으로 이민 간 영주권자도 있었습니다. 그의 부인 마리아 역시 영주권자였습니다. 주재원 비자를 소지하고 미국의 세금을 꼬박꼬박 내는 사람도 영문도 모른 채 끌려가 감옥에 갇힌 것입니다. 민주주의를 외치던 나라가 스스로 가면을 찢어버렸다. 동맹을 모욕하고 자유를 억압한 최악의 폭정. 미국 언론 스스로 내뱉은 비난은 자국 정부에 대한 분노였습니다. CNN, 뉴욕타임스, 워싱턴포스트는 물론 유럽과 아시아 주요 언론들까지도 한국 내 분노에 주목하며 일제히 미국 정부를 향해 목소리를 높이고 있습니다.
After a rather shocking ordeal, over the past week, more than 300 South Korean workers touched down at Seoul's Incheon airport this afternoon to cheers, celebration and certainly relief. But there was also an overwhelming sense of resentment and anger towards the United States. As we recall, last Thursday in the US state of Georgia, Homeland Security carried out what it called the biggest worksite raid in the department's history. Of course, it's all part of President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration. The raid, however, was on a battery plant, a joint venture between Hyundai and LG Energy Solutions to make batteries
batteries for electric vehicles. It was part of a multi-billion-dollar investment by these two Korean companies in the state. This is exactly the type of foreign investment that President Trump wants. But 475 foreign workers were arrested, of which 2/3 were Korean. The majority of them were specialized workers, many of them engineers for the construction phase.
로이터 통신은 수갑과 족쇄를 찬 채 구금된 한국인들이 석방과 귀국을 위한 한국 정부의 치열한 협상 끝에 귀환했다며 이번 사태는 미국의 핵심 동맹인 한국 사회에 큰 충격을 안겼다고 보도했습니다. AP통신도 강도 높게 보도했습니다. 전세기를 타고 귀국한 300여 명의 한국인들이 가족과 눈물로 제외했지만 미국 측이 공개한 수갑과 족쇄 영상은 한국인들에게 분노와 배신감을 불러일으켰다고 직격탄을 날렸습니다. 영국 BBC는 한 발 더 나아가 한국인들은 이제 미국과의 관계를 다시 정의해야 할 시점이라 말한다고 전했습니다. 또한 결국 미국 스스로도 이번 조치가 지나쳤음을 인정하고 있다고 꼬집었습니다. 월스트리트 저널도 경고했습니다. 이번 사태 이후 미국이 해외 투자를 받기 어려워질 것이라는 분석입니다. 미국 내 반응은 더욱 뜨겁게 끓어오르고 있습니다.
And now, South Korea is rightfully furious. The project is in jeopardy and the Republican Party just managed to sabotage one of Trump's own crown jewel investments. All because their own people can't tell the difference between serving the movement and serving their own egos. That's not strength. That doesn't show leadership. That's just pure chaos. And it's the kind of chaos that leaves America's economy in the trash.
미국 내에서는 원망이 더욱 거세지고 있습니다.
Dumbass, bitch-ass idiot calls ICE and has these people detained. Now South Korea has sent a plane, picked up all their asses, and who knows if they're ever coming back. This is going to take 8,000 plus jobs away from the state of Georgia and possibly many more, and all this manufacturing that they would have had, all the money this would have generated for the state of Georgia and our country is now potentially gone, and that may just be that little portion. There could be more significant backlash coming from South Korea, Hyundai, any other South Korean company who was thinking of bringing jobs over to America is gonna think twice now.
현지에서는 이미 이번 단속을 주도한 토리 브레넘을 향한 비난 여론이 폭발하고 있습니다.
This isn't just any factory. This site was supposed to be a $5 billion electric vehicle project. A push towards clean energy, a symbol of partnership between the US and South Korea. Biden put this in motion as part of his green energy agenda. Trump tried to slap his name on it when he got back in office, but the credit wasn't his. So instead, he does this. He sabotages it with the largest single-site ICE raid in history. So let's think about what that means. South Korea is now in Washington trying to figure out whether their investment is even safe. And meanwhile, hundreds of engineers and technicians are gone, just disappeared into the system. Where are they now? Sitting in detention centers, being fast-tracked for deportation? Nobody is giving straight answers. And to make things even worse, they were building the future of American manufacturing, which has been essentially dead for decades now.
한국 기업의 공장을 누구보다 환영했던 배터리 관련 업계 종사자들은 더욱 분노를 터뜨리고 있는데요.
And China leads the world globally when it comes to battery technology, by far. We need to work with Europe and Korea and Japan and other countries to build up this global value chain of batteries. Those Korean Hyundai workers weren't even staying here for very long. They were just coming here to show us the know-how about the equipment and the process and then go back to Korea. They don't want to stay here. Korea's battery industry is booming. It's amazing. Earlier this year, I was in Seoul, Korea at Inner Battery 2025, one of the biggest battery conferences in the world with 80,000 people attending. That's like nearly twice the size as the battery conferences in North America.
전 세계 언론이 이처럼 한 목소리로 미국을 비판한 사례는 드뭅니다. 이번 사태는 대한민국의 자존심과 국민의 단합된 힘을 전 세계에 각인시킨 순간이었으며 한국인들의 결단은 행동으로 이어지고 있습니다. 이건 단순한 체포 사건이 아니라 미국이 스스로의 미래를 내던진 사건이기 때문입니다. 현대차 배터리 공장은 조지아주가 미래 먹거리라며 전폭적으로 지원한 프로젝트였습니다. 그리고 그 핵심은 바로 한국의 기술과 인력이었습니다. 분노는 한국인들만의 것이 아니었습니다. 조지아 현지의 충격은 더 거셌습니다. 조지아 주민들은 한국인 기술자들의 석방을 위해 시위를 벌였고 미국 정치와 기업 범죄, 환경 문제를 다루는 링 오브 파이어의 진행자는 분노의 목소리를 높였습니다.
These people were at work. Oh, but they weren't allowed to work. Oh God, heaven forbid somebody that's not allowed to work is actually contributing to the United States economy. An economy that's on its own last leg right now. We could use all the workers we could get. We could use productivity. We could use people earning money to then go and spend it in the rest of the economy. Oh God, what a horrible thing to happen. And you're like, but they were here illegally. 475 people, including some from South Korea, because it's a South Korean company, that were just over here on business. They were checking out the plant that was being built to make sure everything was going along properly. They were here legally. They were here on a business trip and they got arrested because ICE doesn't differentiate. But these were not criminals. These were not people that were out there, graffitiing up and, mugging people or any of that stuff. They were working, helping the United States as part of an investment agreement that South Korea has with the United States that Trump himself worked out. What the fuck is going on? He got South Korea to agree to invest several $billion here in the United States. They're fucking doing it with their people, which they're entitled to, and he sends federal agents down there to arrest them. You got what you wanted from that country, and you did this anyway. I hope South Korea pulls out. Scrap the plans. Get rid of the plan.
한국인들은 무려 일주일 동안 억류되어 있습니다. 아무 잘못도 없는 숙련 기술자들이 세계 최고의 프로젝트 현장에서 범죄자 취급을 받는 상황. 자유와 인권의 나라라던 미국의 민낯이 여실히 드러났습니다. 처음에 미국 정부는 한국인들을 불법 체류자로 몰며 추방하겠다고 울음장을 놓았습니다. 하지만 곧 상황의 심각성을 깨달았습니다. 그들이야말로 현지 공장에서 미국 노동자들을 가르칠 유일한 교육 인력이었기 때문이죠. 교육 인력과 기술자들이 한순간에 사라지면 현지에서 공정을 이어갈 사람이 단 한 명도 없다는 사실을 그제서야 깨닫게 된 것이죠. 결국 미국은 입장을 바꿔 한국 기술자들에게 조금만 더 머물러 달라며 애원하기 시작했습니다. 이 과정에서 귀국은 하루나 더 지연되었습니다. 그러나 이미 자존심이 무너지고 지쳐버린 한국 기술자들의 마음은 확고했습니다. 우리는 한국으로 돌아가겠다. 현지 방송은 애틀랜타 공항으로 달려가 한국인들의 귀국길과 빈자리를 생생히 전했습니다.
Now, 300 South Korean workers detained in that ICE raid last week are on board a 747 heading back home. Both Georgia and South Korean officials are acknowledging the arrest put a strain on their relationship. Channel 2's Richard Elliott live now at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, where that flight, Richard, took off just before noon.
Yeah, that flight left here about 11:40 this morning. They're probably somewhere over the Pacific Ocean right now. Georgia and South Korea have a long business and cultural relationship dating back decades. Both sides hoping this won't stop that. 7 buses finished their 5-hour drive from the ICE detention center in Folkestone and turned into Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Federal authorities prevented us from seeing the 300 South Korean former detainees transferring from the buses to a Korean Air 747. But later, News Chopper 2 was over the airport as that special chartered flight lifted off and began its long flight back to Seoul. ICE agents arrested 475 people during a raid on the Hyundai electric vehicle plant in South Georgia last week. 300 were South Korean. A detainee's family member emailed me saying the week-long ordeal traumatized them all. Quote, most if not all of the nationals are traumatized from the events. Nobody's been able to speak with them, and we only got word to our family through the Korean consulate, who relayed basic messages for us. In a statement, Governor Brian Kemp seemed to acknowledge the strain these arrests put on relations with South Korea. Quote, we are thankful they are reiterating their commitment to adhere to all state and federal laws, just as we remain committed to not allowing this unfortunate incident to undo decades of mutually beneficial partnerships we've built together.
We've been assisting some of these individuals.
Immigration attorney Jorge Gavilanes represents some of the detainees. He believes the Trump administration is allowing them to leave voluntarily and without charges to clean up a messy situation.
So how to best clean it up quickly and as quietly as possible? Yes, it's all a mess, right? On the legal side, it makes no sense what they're doing.
Now, we did reach out to ICE for comment. We still have not heard back. We're live at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Richard Elliott, Channel 2 Action News.
이번 사건은 분명합니다. 결국 한국인들이 떠난 자리는 조지아주 전역에 공포와 혼란을 남겼습니다. 미국 경제 전문 매체 이코노미스트는 현대차 단속, 미국의 자충수로 기록되다라는 제목의 기사에서 조지아주가 올림픽보다 더 큰 경제적 가치를 잃었다고 보도했습니다. 매체는 미국 측의 행동이 결코 논리적이지 않았다고 지적했습니다. 현대차 공장은 조지아주에서 대규모 제조업을 부활시키고 외국 기업 투자를 유치하는 핵심 프로젝트였기 때문입니다. 전문가들은 한국인 기술자들이 빠지자 공장이 사실상 멈췄고 미국 측이 뒤늦게야 자신들이 얼마나 큰 실수를 저질렀는지 깨닫게 되었다고 분석했습니다. 이들은 이번 사건이 단순한 단속이 아니라 미국 경제와 현지 산업에 심각한 영향을 끼친 자충수라고 평가했습니다. 더 치명적인 건 미래 투자까지 흔들리고 있다는 점입니다. 이번 사건으로 미국은 안전한 투자처가 아니다라는 불신이 퍼지면서 한국뿐만 아니라 다른 나라 기업들도 미국을 외면할 조짐을 보이고 있습니다. 그야말로 한순간의 오만한 단속이 미국 경제 전체를 벼랑 끝으로 몰아넣고 있는 셈입니다. 최근 미국의 관세 폭탄을 맞은 인도는 한국 편을 들며 미국의 압박을 정면으로 비판했습니다.
For years, American authorities had tolerated foreign technicians entering the country on short-term visas to install equipment and support construction at major plants. Business groups say that states like Georgia often turned a blind eye to these arrangements, recognizing that they were critical to completing multi-billion-dollar projects on time. The sudden shift to a hardline rate has left Korean officials and companies questioning U.S. consistency. Critics in Seoul are calling it a case of double standards, pushing for massive investment and foreign expertise, then penalizing the very workers who helped deliver it. The fallout comes against the backdrop of South Korea pledging $350 billion in U.S. investment and agreeing to buy $100 billion in American energy. The Trump administration insists that the crackdown is about enforcing immigration law and protecting U.S. jobs. But with images of Korean workers shackled and loaded onto buses dominating headlines in Seoul, the raid has triggered outrage and raised doubts about Washington's reliability as a partner. Companies are now demanding clearer visa rules, warning that without predictability, America's reputation as a stable investment destination is at risk.
여러분의 소중한 의견을 남겨주세요. 바쁘시더라도 구독과 좋아요 부탁드립니다. 시청해주셔서 감사합니다. 앞으로도 더욱 노력하여 유익하고 재밌는 콘텐츠로 찾아오겠습니다. 지금까지 단골이슈였습니다.